The New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner has defended the organisation's prescribed burning efforts ahead of this bushfire crisis. Crews are using the cooler weather to strengthen containment lines ahead of worsening conditions. I'm joined now by the RFS spokesman Ben Shepherd for more on this. Ben, thanks very much for your time. Look, let's start on the active fire situation, of course. Where are the big fears right now? A lot of talk about the Snowies, of course. Can you talk us through what threat is looming there?
Yeah, look, as you just mentioned, the Snowies really haven't seen any of this coastal rain that we've experienced at least over the last 24 to 48 hours. So those fires continue to move, especially that Duns Road fire is continuing to move and continues to grow. And in fact, we're getting some pressure, especially on those northeastern sides of those fire grounds, just trying to hold them along some fire trails. Along the coast, though, we've seen anywhere between a couple of mil up to even 10 or 15 mils of rain across some of those fire grounds. So that's limiting our opportunity to do some backburning in an effort to try and contain those fires. But look, at this stage, still uncontained. We are looking at some hot weather coming in towards Friday and Saturday. So our message still very much for those areas, probably still not safe for visitors to return to those areas, and that does include the areas around the Bay and Basin, in particular around places like Huskinson and Hymes Beach.
So on the situation in the Snowies, yesterday we were hearing there were 2 water bombing aircraft operating there. Is that the extent of it, and why is it so limited? I mean, you're the expert here, but I'd assume it's actually a pretty good area to water bomb, given you've got this big area, Lake Jindabyne. It's still water as well, and close relatively to some of these fire fronts.
Yeah, look, but it is important to note that water bombers don't extinguish fires. They do knock down the fire front, but at some stage there is still the requirement to actually move around the edges of this fire, put in some backburns in order to actually bring the fire under control. So obviously we need to target those water bombers where the greatest need is. At the moment, especially on those areas that are currently getting pressure on the containment lines, trying to knock that fire down as it approaches it, or where it's spotting over those containment lines, try and hit those spot fires down. So we're having to reshare those more than 100 aircraft, right across the state, right across these fire grounds, which are still, in excess of almost 4 million hectares that we're having to deal with. So trying to share those resources across those fire grounds is done in a targeted and through a lot of planning.
And so those 100, are we seeing 100 go into the air each day? Are they all able to be operational across the state at the moment?
Yeah, look, it does depend obviously on things like cloud cover, but it's also important to note that some of those aircraft are surveillance aircraft. Some of them actually are used for obviously fire spotting as well, and then we've got a mixture of water bombing aircraft. So some of them quite small, holding around about 1,000 litres of water, others upwards of 3.5, and then obviously we get to our large air tankers as well. So look, there's a mixture of aircraft, but we have to use them in the most effective way possible. So today, as I said, it'll be in those areas where we are seeing flaring and running of those fires, or where it is close to residential areas. But it's important to note, as I said, they don't extinguish the fire. You still actually need to get firefighters on the ground actually extinguishing those fires, making sure they're completely blacked out, because the issue that we've got when we run into weather like we're going to see on Friday, those fires can still flare and run.
So Friday's a spike day. That's the big concern. In a medium term, though, meteorologists are saying there are actually some good signs that all the sort of indicators that tip us into hotter and drier weather, they've gone now when you look at various climatic models and so on in, off the coast and into the ocean. So is that at least some encouragement? I know we need a big swathe of rain, but the really catastrophic conditions might not return for quite some time.
Yeah, of course it is, and I think that anyone that would welcome that news would be our firefighters. So look, if we're not going to see those kind of temperatures, at least even if it is for a couple of weeks, just to take that foot off the accelerator, just allow them to take a bit of a breather would be most welcome. Look, as you just mentioned, though, what we do need is a lot of rain. But even if this period gives us a chance to try and contain still more than these 122 fires, we welcome that with open arms. But we understand as well that there is still a lot of work to do. And we're not understating that. And there's still firefighters giving up their time to try and put these fires out and also bring them under control. Until such time that they are declared out or we get that rain, they'll continue to be out there on those fire grounds.
A lot of talk about hazard reduction. John Barilaro has suggested that he is listening to you, the RFS, talking about limited windows to be able to conduct this hazard reduction in the cooler times, but he says perhaps more resources, more people in the limited windows. Would that help?
Yeah, look, of course it is, and it's probably one of the two things that we're most restricted by, obviously, is resourcing, but the other one being weather. But as the Commissioner raised this morning as well, we must cast our eye back to autumn last year, where we were getting criticised for actually doing a large amount of hazard reduction and the smoke that therefore settled over a broad area, and people were calling for it to stop. So it is about striking that balance. It is about ensuring that we are targeting those burns close to residential areas, close to people, where we know it can make a difference. But look, we'll be looking to take advantage once this weather turns, once we actually get some cooler weather and some more favourable weather. We'll be looking at what areas then do need hazard reduction and obviously trying to get stuck into that work as well. But look, yeah, we would welcome obviously a change in the weather, but also further resourcing obviously to assist in undertaking that necessary work.
Ben, I want to ask you finally about the human element to this, whether it be deliberately lit fires and arson or people not obeying the various restrictions on firefighting, the fire bans. Is there something missing in terms of how we approach this? Is there a change that RFS is seeing on the ground that could be implemented?
Look, we must be mindful as well. If people need to understand that if they're going to partake in lighting fires out in the landscape, that there are serious, obviously, penalties for doing so, and we need people to understand that. But also getting the community to relay that message and understand that if they do see something suspicious, they need to report it. We do have some of the strongest penalties here in this state for arson, and I think that we need to apply those. And if people are found to have been lighting fires, especially over the last few months during this time of year where it's been incredibly dangerous, and they are found to be doing so, I hope that they see that full weight of the law and they're given the full weight of those penalties, because we need to set that example. We're fortunate, though, at least at this stage, and I use a different word, but the majority of these fires have been a result of lightning. But I am well aware that there are a number that we are treating as suspicious, and hopefully, you know, what we can find those that may be responsible and actually bring them before the courts.
So majority lightning, do you have a breakdown on a percentage, I suppose, of arson or human error this year versus others? It's been a big part of commentary. Has it increased?
No, look, this year I wouldn't have necessarily the breakdown, but I can confidently say that majority of the larger fires that we have been dealing with have been a result of fires coming out of remote areas as a result of dry lightning storms, and that was really the instances from the north as well earlier on in the year, and then very much through places like the Cozzy. Out then through the back of the south coast as well. So a lot of those have been a result of lightning that has moved through there, with no associated rain that's given these fires in broad areas right across this state.
Presumably, at the end of the season, you get all the figures to figure out if there's one particular area, you know, that needs addressing. Yeah,
look, of course, we'll look at that. It is pretty obvious too when in the absence of any natural causes, when there isn't lightning in a particular area, and where there isn't someone coming forward saying, you know what, I was mowing here or slashing here and it got away. It is quite easy to determine at one point or another whether or not that fire may be determined as suspicious, and that's why I'm saying the vast majority, at least this year, have been a result of lightning.
Well, started naturally. We're hoping that they get put out naturally via a lot of rainfall. We know it's not on the horizon just yet, but fingers crossed. Ben Shepherd, thanks for your time.